Jaylen Wells is out for the foreseeable future with a broken wrist. Thankfully, that's the extent of the injuries, at least that we know of. Get well soon, Jaylen. Damichael Cole and I are back, and we are going to talk about how best to replace Jaylen Wells, plus our best and worst playoff matchups going into a pretty busy weekend for the Grizzlies, closing out the regular season. And of course, we preview the very important Grizzlies Timberwolves game tonight in Memphis, Tennessee. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Thursday episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mullinax. And again, when I say one of your hosts, that is a wonderful thing because it means the dynamic duo is riding once more. Damichael Cole of the Memphis Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer, award-winning Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, joins me and joins us. And I'm so glad wherever you're checking out the show that you are indeed making the choice to spend part of your day hanging out with Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make Damichael and I a part of your everyday NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. And we're really making a big push right now with the newsletter, Damichael. I liked your ad read earlier for the newsletter, yesterday on the newsletter, on your solo show. We're growing by leaps and bounds over there. We're having some success, and it's a chance for you.
Joe. Shout out to you. You're a big part of that.
I appreciate that. And we're going to keep making that push all through the month of April. We'll talk more about that later on in the show. But LockedOnDaily.com, go there, subscribe right now if you haven't already done so. Words from me on the Grizzlies each and every day. Make sure you
close
are
to 5K subs too, Joe. We're close.
Yeah, on YouTube, absolutely, almost at 5K. I have a feeling we're going to break through in the postseason over the next.
Without doubt, easily.
Yeah, postseason's a good time. It's nice to be back in the playoffs, right? It's been a couple years, so literally 2 years. So it's going to be good to be talking postseason basketball. Maybe not playoff basketball. Still got a lot of ball to play, but Memphis isn't going to fall below the 8th seed. So at the very least, there's going to be 2 games that they're going to be playing with the play-in tournament, even if they lose both of those games. But the way they're playing recently, that is less likely than it was a week ago. It seems like they found their footing a little bit. Again, lesser competition. Tonight, that will not be the case against the Timberwolves. Pretty good competition coming to FedEx Forum this evening. We'll get to that later. But the big news of yesterday's show, a very successful solo show for you yesterday, partner. The big news was Jaylen Wells' injury. Of course, you don't want to have clicks and downloads at the expense of somebody's health and well-being. Jaylen Wells, we're wishing you well. And it sounds like you're in good spirits. It sounds like it's not as bad as it certainly looked like it could have been. And again, you did a great job covering that yesterday. Yeah. The raw reality of professional sports and sports in general is it's a next man up kind of thing. So no one on the Grizzlies except for Jaylen Wells has played in every game this season. That obviously will change tonight with Wells being out. What should the Grizzlies do to replace him? Is it as simple as inserting someone like a Luke Kennard or Vince Williams Jr. in the starting lineup? Do you try to do it in the aggregate? Do you get creative and put somebody like Scottie Pippen Jr. out there and go small? Do you put Santi Aldama out there and go big? Is it a mix? How are you, Damichael Cole, thinking that it would be the best way to replace somebody who has been the one constant in the Grizzlies rotation all season long?
But the first thing I'm thinking with this move is defense. I know that a lot of people will consider the idea of going big and, inserting Santi in there. But I'm thinking defense more than anything. Santi, you throw Santi in there, it kind of helps you with the rebounding. It gives you that size advantage over a lot of teams. But I think with the way that Zach Edey has rebounded the basketball over the last 4 games, and he's showing growth, he's getting better. In that area, rebounding to me, at least in the starting group, is not as big of an emphasis because you got, Zach Edey, last 2 games, we're talking 40-plus rebounds right now. So when you factor that in, my primary concern is getting someone who can be that primary dirty work guy on the defensive end, who's going to scrap for the loose balls, who's going to be the guy that's going to guard those top elite scorers on the offensive end when you have John Morant and Desmond Bane, having a heavier load. Offensively for you, And the guy that comes to mind in that case is Vince Williams Jr. Look, we've talked about it for a while, Joe. You and me both. We've been kind of big fans of what Vince Williams Jr. is capable of. And what I mean by capable of is we saw it in a small dosage last season when he was on the floor with Ja, Dez, and Jaren and those guys for the that 9-game stretch that Ja played and whatnot. And we saw it when those guys, Dez and Ja specifically, went through injuries, and Vince Williams Jr. had to be more of a playmaker, right? He had kind of an elevated role. And what we saw in that case was, wow, this guy can play out of the pick and roll. And something that I've touched on a lot, and we touched on it actually last week. I said if the Grizzlies are to kind of be the best version of themselves going into the postseason, we're going to see a lot of Vince Williams Jr.'s minutes. And that has to be the case now. He's going to have to step up. We talked about how he's kind of gradually tried to get to 100%. If you followed the Vince Williams Jr. journey this season, he got hurt in the preseason, missed time, came back in November, played 3 games, grade 3 ankle sprain, didn't come back to February. So it's been setback after setback. Finally, it's been playing, since February, but he's not been playing in back-to-backs. So, up to this point, I think if he plays both legs of this back-to-back, it'll be the first time he's played both legs back-to-backs since he's been back. So, look, that's what it's going to come down to. He is now, I can say you can make an argument, he's probably the 5th most important player for the Grizzlies because Zach Edey, to me, has taken another step in his importance, especially with the way that the Grizzlies are using him now. Zach Edey is much more important because of the way that they're using him. We're going to talk about him more as we get into that Timberwolves matchup. But Vince Williams Jr., even like as good as Santi Aldama is, Santi Aldama's more, the scoring, all those things he does well. But you talk about who's going to be important for this team, they're going to need Vince Williams Jr. to be that guy.
The answer is Vince Williams Jr. because he's going to allow John Morant and Desmond Bane to be what they need to be, right? I don't want Desmond Bane defending Anthony Edwards to start off the game tonight. I don't want that. I want that to be Vince Williams Jr. It sure as hell can't be Santi Aldama. I guess in theory it could be, but it shouldn't be. And even worse than Santi would be Luke Kennard. So you and I are on the same page in terms of defense needs to be the priority. Therefore, Vince Williams Jr. should be the starter. But if it's not Vince Williams Jr., I'm going to throw you for a loop a little bit here, partner. It's not John Conchar. The second
I knew you weren't going to go there.
Yeah, absolutely not. The second option should be Scottie Pippen Jr. Now,
go small.
This is a bold strategy because obviously pretty much all of your initiators of offense are starting the game. There would have to be different – well, yeah, and there'd have to be different rotations. You'd have to tweak substitution patterns to be sure. But I am that against putting, especially Luke Kennard, because he has been a replacement starter in the past.
No, not anymore.
Santi Aldama, I like him as a scorer off the bench. I think that maximizes his skill set. It's about what is best, not just for that position, but for everybody around that position. That was a strength of Jaylen Wells. You've talked a lot in the past, Damichael, about elite role players. Jaylen Wells, he's not going to be a star. But the Memphis Grizzlies don't need him to be a star. They need him to be an elite role player, like you've talked about time and again. And that's exactly what Wells has the capacity to do. That's also what Vince Williams Jr. has the capacity to do. But even though he's not as big, Scottie Pippen Jr. has shown that capacity too. So it should be Vince Williams Jr. Option B for me is Scottie Pippen Jr. and going small.
I like that. I think those are the two guys that you lean on a lot. You lean on Vince Williams Jr. We'll see. I think his results on the defensive end have gradually gotten better. We've seen some of that peskiness that we're used to seeing from him. Scottie Pippen Jr. has been outstanding. And I've liked his defense against bigger guys in recent weeks too. We've seen him. That's why I'm not opposed to your idea, because we've seen him guard, the Kevin Durant's and Devin Booker's in stretches recently. He's kind of, he had to guard, Luka some. Recently, like we've seen him take on those matchups and kind of hold his own. So I think it's not you're not really too worried about the size deficit there, because he's going to get into the body of those guys and kind of take away their space, which eliminates that height advantage that those players have. So you factor that in. I like your suggestion there. I think there are other guys who can be kind of those specialty guys, like those, you think football, like third down backs, or in baseball, your pinch hitters and things like that. a Lamar Stevens where you're going against a team like the Lakers and they have Luka and LeBron, clearly two very bigger and physical guys. Lamar Stevens would kind of probably be a guy you want to lean on a little bit more in that type of matchup. There are other teams that most of their scoring comes from the inside, and they don't have that many options. And in that case, you can maybe potentially throw in like a Gigi Jackson into the equation. But right now, I'm leaning on those two guys. I'm just throwing a couple other names out there. I like what you said with Scottie Pippen Jr., and I like what we said about Vince Williams Jr. Those are the two guys that you really need to lean on during this stretch.
It's still wild, obviously, coming out of the game Wednesday night, Luka returning to Dallas for the first time as a Laker. Crazy to say Luka and LeBron. And, there's a chance that we're saying those two names together a lot over the next couple of weeks here on Locked On Grizzlies. Let Damichael and I know at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax on X. Hit us up in the comments. Do you agree? Again, option A for both of us is Vince Williams Jr. I'm a Scottie Pippen Jr. guy. Beyond that, sounds like Damichael is too, but he's also open to some creativity beyond Scottie. Let us know who you like in the comments. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we'll be talking best and worst playoff matchups, who we hope Memphis sees in the first round if they get there, and who we do not want the Grizzlies to see. Stick around. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible. File every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. This is only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by Prizepicks. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prizepicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prizepicks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, Prizepicks keeps every game exciting. Damichael's a big Atlanta Braves fan. I'm more of a Washington Nationals guy myself. So this week, I'm picking C.J. Abrams for more than 1 home run and James Woods, for more than 1 stolen base. It's that easy. It's fast. It's simple. Setting a lineup takes less than 60 seconds. And I always take advantage coming up this next week of Taco Tuesday, where Prizepicks offers discounts on select player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. Go check them out. So Damichael, there's been a lot made of the logjam that is the Western Conference. Memphis, as of this recording, still technically has an outside chance at the 4 seed in the Western Conference. They also still have a chance at being the 8 seed in the Western Conference. So lots of wiggle room still heading into these last 3 games of the year. And I'm sure we'll talk more about the realities of them playing in Memphis against the Timberwolves tonight, in Denver against the Nuggets on Friday night. That is quite the back-to-back. But before we get there, looking at the lay of the land, the possible matchups, who would you want to see the Grizzlies play in the first round, and who would you not want the Grizzlies to see? And we're gonna exclude the quality of content and clicks and downloads from this conversation. Because the answer is the Los Angeles Lakers, if we're going off of that. So this is strictly from a basketball standpoint. I will start with who I would like to see.
Okay.
I would like to see either the Houston Rockets, which if you're an everydayer to Locked On Grizzlies, that's a pretty dramatic change for me from a couple months ago where I thought Memphis would lose to them in 5. I think they're young and inexperienced, and Memphis obviously also young and inexperienced in spots, but they have experience in their superstar spaces. Whereas Fred VanVleet is really the only guy for the Rockets that's a star level player that has that experience. So I would say the Rockets or the Nuggets, who, I know we haven't had a chance to talk a ton about it. The Nuggets looked at the Grizzlies and said, hold my beer. right? Firing their head
I mean,
coach, firing their
you said
GM.
it was one of the most surprising things of the season with the Grizzlies, and then boom.
Yeah. Taylor Jenkins is now the third most surprising thing in the NBA season, which is phenomenal because that was pretty darn surprising. We were pretty busy for that 72-hour stretch there when Jenkins got let go. But the Nuggets are in worse straits than the Grizzlies are. So I do think that the shorter turnaround, Memphis has had a chance to be together in this new look a little bit longer. Obviously, the best player on the planet still plays for Denver. But for me, those are the two teams that I would want to see from a basketball standpoint. I think Memphis has the best chance against Houston and Denver. What say you in a potential first-round matchup?
Yeah, I think that one, those two make a lot of sense. I'm going to give you two different teams here. And I'm going to start number one with the Minnesota Timberwolves, the actual opponent for this game. The Timberwolves are talented. They are a team that kind of, they tend to make things tough on Ja Morant, in the past. But Desmond Baines he had a really big series against them with Brandon Clark, who's, no longer going to be a factor the rest of the way. He had a big series a couple years ago when they played them in the playoffs. It's less about that and the fact that the Timberwolves have some similar struggles, as the Grizzlies, late game situations, right? We've seen a lot of times, Anthony Edwards, he's going to go for the whole thing. He's going to shoot 3-pointers. Their ball movement gets a little bit stagnant. They're a great defensive team, but a lot of the things that they're great at, I think the Grizzlies match up well. That's more matchup dependent in terms of, Rudy Gobert versus Zach Edey. I think that's going to be a matchup I really want to see tonight to kind of get a better gauge if this is a good matchup for the Grizzlies. But the Grizzlies, I think, have a couple wins against Timberwolves this season. They're 2-0 against the Timberwolves. So I like that matchup as one. And here's one that's going to probably shock you a little bit, Joe. But I like the Grizzlies a decent amount. Like not heavy favorites in any stretch, but I would probably pick them to win this series. Some people probably about to call me crazy. But I'm going to say the Lakers. I'm going to say Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron James, with Luka Doncic on it. I've seen what they did to, OKC, recently, and, how they were handling OKC before the Luka ejection, in the other game. I've seen all of that. But here's the thing. When we see the Grizzlies play the Lakers in that recent game, what we saw was Zach Edey be an absolute difference maker. What we've seen over the course of this season in Grizzlies-Lakers matchups is Zach Edey be a difference maker. What we're seeing with Isolo taking over as the interim coach for the Grizzlies is he trusts Zach Edey way more than Taylor Jenkins did. And from a usage standpoint, we're seeing, I talked about it in the yesterday's show. Joe, did you know Zach Edey hadn't even touched 30 minutes in a game before the month of April?
100%.
He's done it twice this month, and that's going to continue to be a trend. And when you play the Lakers, they got one big. They got one. They're still bargain shopping for bigs. I still see their fans saying, oh, maybe we can go get this guy. It's too late. They got Jackson.
We know Dwight Howard is in Los Angeles, right?
They got Jackson Hayes, who's a backup big, and for any other team, and they got Jared Vanderbilt playing the 5. That's easy pickings for Zach Edey. Now, of course, the Lakers with LeBron and Luka with how cerebral they are, they're going to try to play Zach off the floor on that end because they want the Grizzlies to downsize. But I think with the way that Isolo uses Edey, the size advantage in that series could really help the Grizzlies because the hard thing is going to be guarding LeBron and Luka. That's for anybody. That's everybody's problem. But from the standpoint of having Zach Edey as a difference maker, the Lakers won't be a great rim protection team. You know what team likes to get to the paint? The Grizzlies. So another game that matches up well. But yeah, we got to do worse too. We got to touch on where we spent a lot of time on the best matchup.
We did. So we can go a little bit faster with worst. For me, I am scared of teams that have multiple superstars, with the Lakers being the exception, right? So
I thought you were going to include them. Okay.
No, I'm going to say they're the exception for all the reasons that you just said.
Yeah.
I think that while Zach Edey is certainly not a superstar, that mismatch is so pronounced, and Isolo has proven that he is capable of taking advantage of that mismatch. So again, LeBron and Luka, obviously superstars, Hall of Famers, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The Lakers are the exception to my rule. I don't want to see the Clippers I don't want to see the Golden State Warriors because you have Kawhi Leonard looking like the Claw, right? Coming back and looking exactly like the guy that everybody feared back in his Spurs and Raptors days. You have James Harden, who has reinvented himself into this really impressive point guard. Norm Powell having a tremendous season. Ivica Zubac, Defensive Player of the Year. I think the Clippers are going to be a really scary team in the Western Conference. And the Warriors, they're something like 19-2 or 18-3 since the Jimmy Butler trade.
Yeah, they're really good with him.
Steph Curry, depending on how you perceive how they've played, you could argue Curry is the number 2 option now in Golden State. Now, obviously, but behind Jimmy Butler. But hold on, let me explain myself. Butler is such a creator of offense for himself in a unique way, right? Andrew Wiggins was not that, right? And Jimmy Butler is able to get his own bucket. So because of that, you have to respect him differently defensively, which gives Steph Curry more ability. So if you want to say Jimmy Butler's 1B to Steph's 1A,
that's fair.
That's totally cool too. I'm fine with that explanation. What I mean by that is Steph doesn't have to do it alone. And when you combine those two as bucket getters together with Draymond Green, who is probably the Defensive Player of the Year, that is a team that I also do not want to see in the postseason. The Clippers and the Warriors are the ones that I am worried about.
Warriors in their own
beyond league. The Thunder obviously go without saying.
It's self-explanatory. Warriors in their own league for me. That is a team that they take away a lot of the Grizzlies' strength. They're very good pick and roll defense. There were some plays. I mean, when Jaren Jackson Jr. there was one play he was backing up Draymond Green in the post, and he's very good against Draymond Green just historically. He does well in that matchup. And Jimmy Butler came from. I mean, you talk about it, Joe, but Jimmy Butler is one of those players who has the smarts to recognize it. Jaren had no clue he was coming. Came from behind, picked the ball out, had the easiest layup of his life. Like, there are few players who are as smart as him as a help side defender in that way. They're a team that has the pick and roll defense, and then they have the pick and roll offense that's going to make you take Zach Edey off the floor. Because you got to play drop, or you're going to switch him onto Steph on that island, or you're going to try to hedge it, and then you get Draymond Green. The basketball is a decision maker, and then you got Jimmy Butler flanked on. It's just a terrible matchup. It's a terrible matchup, all because they're going to take Zach Edey off the floor. And look, this was the series where you would love to have Brandon Clark. I would not be as afraid of Golden State for the Grizzlies. If we allow, you could throw Brandon Clark in there, and now you got the two mobile bigs with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clark. You switch things, you eliminate that whole factor, but you don't have him anymore. So Zach Edey is that much more important. And with that being said, Golden State is the team that scares me. Nobody else really to a certain level. Like Houston, I wouldn't pick the Grizzlies to beat Houston, but I've told you from the jump, Joe, that series is more toss-up to me. They're very closely knit teams. Golden State's in his own league. The Clippers, really good. I think with Kawhi getting into his playoff mode, that's going to be something to see, like how he turns it up a notch for the playoffs. But with all that being said, it's Golden State. Golden State, other than OKC, as you said.
So we're on the same page with the Warriors. A lot of different teams that we wouldn't mind seeing. Let us know in the comments. Hit us up on X at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax. Who do you want to see and not see in a potential first round or even play-in matchup? Because that is still very much on the table, of course, for the Memphis Grizzlies. When we come back, we're going to finish up this episode previewing a potential play-in, playoff opponent for the Grizzlies, the Minnesota Timberwolves. We're going to talk about them next because that's the opponent in this week's edition of the biggest game of the season so far. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When any player drops 50 or more in a game during the 2024-2025 regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. After an epic 50-point performance, you know how I want to celebrate? I want to order wings, delicious smoked chicken wings, reminding me of the great food that's down in Memphis, Tennessee. Not as good, of course, but it's still good stuff, and it can be delivered straight to your door thanks to Dash Pass, and DoorDash. If you're planning to catch the next big game, order a to-go grouping of snacks and meals at a discount and get ready for more high-scoring action. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off and order the next day up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more today. All right, Damichael, a few minutes left in the show. We'll get out of here on this. Grizzlies, Timberwolves, big one tonight in Memphis, Tennessee. Spoiler alert, the everydayers already know this one. This is a late start for your boy, Joe Mullinax. So
you know what that means.
You know what that means. It's going to be Damichael once again getting down on a Friday by himself. Hey, man, I'm old and washed. At least I own it. I'll watch the first half. It's early enough that I can get the first half in, and then I'm hitting the bed, hitting the hay. The Grizzlies injury report, aside from Brandon Clark and now, of course, Jaylen Wells, relatively clean. Those are still two important rotation players. How do you see this going for Memphis against a Minnesota team that is just as desperate? They are a part of that collection of teams that essentially 5 teams in the Western Conference that all have within a game of the same record, if not the exact same record going into this game. It's going to be a fascinating watch. What are your keys to the contest?
This is one where I'm interested to see how Tomas Isolo coaches this game, because Minnesota's one of the few teams, the few good teams I would add, that this new offense that the Grizzlies kind of put in at the beginning of the season, it wasn't really bad against Minnesota. They've had some type of success against them, whereas if you look at games against the Timberwolves over the years, the pick and roll heavy offense that the Grizzlies like to play, when you got Jaden McDaniels and his 6'9", 6'10" guy with his long arms, Anthony Edwards, great weak side, super athletic guy, Nikhil Alexander Walker, 6'5", with super long arms, Rudy Gobert at the rim. You got all these rangy defenders. They just, they swallow up guys when you try to play in those small spaces. They're not the team that you want to really get too reliant on pick and roll again. So with that being said, just going to be curious, how do you coach this game? Do you kind of, let's lean on some of the things that have worked a lot against this team over the course of the season? Or do you say, you know what, man, since we've kind of incorporated more pick and roll, Ja's been rolling. Since we've incorporated more pick and roll, Zach Edey has been a bad man. Let's keep it going against this team that tends to play better defense against those style teams, against the Grizzlies, at least in that case. That's what my eyes are going to be on. And in particularly, I want to see how the Timberwolves do the matchups again. Jaden McDaniels has to me, been a tough matchup for Ja, because he forces Ja to shoot a lot of jumpers, and he closes out because he's 6'10", but he's agile enough when Ja's going to the rim, it's tough to finish around him. But we've seen the Timberwolves at time put Anthony Edwards on Ja Morant, which is another super athlete. But that's a better matchup for Ja from a size standpoint. And we've seen Jaden McDaniels guard Desmond Bane, which I don't know why they're doing that, because Desmond Bane is more of a movement guy, and that kind of works in his advantage a little bit more, moving Jaden McDaniels off the ball because he's a really good on-ball defender. So really curious to see the little intricacies of this game. It's not really about making or missing shots to me. It's about how will the Grizzlies game plan, and how will the Wolves defensively try to attack the Grizzlies as they kind of incorporated some new things lately.
Ja Morant is the X factor in this game, and that's going to sound like a cop-out because no crap, Joe. Ja Morant is the superstar. Ja Morant is 100% going to be a key component to the Grizzlies winning this game. The reason that I say that Ja Morant is the key is, Damichael, I know you probably know this. You know more about the Grizzlies than I do. You know who's shooting the ball remarkably well from three this month? Now, it's in a small sample size of 3 games. Ja Morant is shooting 48% from beyond the arc in the month of April. Okay, he has made 12 threes out of 25 attempts. Now, do I expect that to continue? No, we have a much larger sample size that Ja is not.
That's why his 3-point celebrations have been such a big deal. We're seeing them. We're seeing it a lot.
Exactly right. We haven't had a chance to talk about that. I'm guessing you love the grenade. I'm a huge fan of the grenade. Like
I mean,
I want to see a bayonet. I want to see him like stuffing a cannon and running away from the cannon before it fires. I am all for, the pettiness.
Bring out all the non-shooting war
Fantastic.
figurative moves that you can.
I support each and every one of them. I think
straight
it's
Call of Duty this thing, like.
Yes, absolutely. A rocket launcher, 100%. Noob tube to hell. But I think that if he is a 35 or 36% three-point shooter, that changes things. Because the Minnesota Timberwolves have gone under on just about every screen that has ever been set for Ja Morant. And McDaniels is so long, he's able to limit the space that Ja gets to work with and create on the perimeter. If he's able to hit that three and he's 2 for 5, right? 3 for 7 from beyond the arc, that changes the game, and that throws Minnesota through a loop.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. He might have to be 4 for 10, right? And that would be seismic for these Grizzlies in a game that's almost certainly going to be a single possession game. The game's a toss up on FanDuel and anywhere else you look at betting lines. This is a true pick'em. Ja Morant's going to be the difference, right? And for the Timberwolves, obviously, it's going to be Anthony Edwards, and how those two guys can lead their teams and get them past this point. Damichael, this is a huge game because we've said this numerous times in the last couple of weeks, right? This is the biggest game of the season so far.
They all are at this point,
Well, but they've lost them, right? They haven't won one of those games yet. So can they find a way to knock off a Timberwolves team? And it wouldn't guarantee them staying out of the play-in, but it sure as heck would help that process.
Put you in a good spot,
Right. So it's a huge game for that reason. I'm excited for it. I know Damichael is as well. And I know that's going to be the leading factor that Damichael will be talking about on the Friday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, because I will be asleep when that episode is being recorded. But Damichael, what else do you think you're going to head into the weekend with the next episode?
Yeah, don't hold anything back in this game. I don't want to see them hold anything back simply because, I know it's a back-to-back, and, this is a back-to-back. We didn't even get to talk about it much, but this is typically what people call a scheduled loss or whatever.
The Friday game.
The Grizzlies, the setup. Joe, you're talking about an 8:30 start time. The Grizzlies are probably going to fly out like 3, 4 in the morning. Well, they're probably going to,
they'll get to Denver.
They're going to get to Denver probably 4 a.m.ish. And they're going to get there. There's a time zone adjustment, but still, it's going to be sleep. There's going to be no shoot around. And you're going to have that game. It's a tough turnaround. Usually teams come out a little lethargic in that scenario, whatever. The Grizzlies can't afford that. So I don't think the team should be approaching, and I don't think they will. I'm just saying it just out of formality. But like you coach this game like this is the last one, and then when you get to that one, you coach it the same way. I want to see Vince Williams Jr. play both legs of the back-to-back. And I just want to see the Grizzlies get after it. Like this team has shown a lot more energy as of lately. But guess what? We talked about it a lot, Joe. They beat the Hornets. Whoop-de-doo. They beat the Heat. Yeah, it was all right. They had a nice little win streak, but still Miami Heat. They're not top 3, 4 in the East. Here's your chance to show, okay, Taylor Jenkins is gone, and we are for sure better. Like, people think they've looked better. Like, my eye test tells me that they've looked better. Beat a good team and prove that you're better.
It's going to be a good episode on Friday. Make sure you're hanging out with Damichael Ford. And make sure, if you haven't already done so, that you're subscribing to our Locked On Grizzlies newsletter, because the Grizzlies are getting ready for postseason basketball, if you haven't noticed. Locked On Grizzlies, we have you covered every step of the way, not just in podcast form, but also in our newsletter. Subscribe for expert analysis from me, insider insights, and all of the playoff action delivered straight to your inbox for free. Plus, as a subscriber, you will be entered to win one of these 3 amazing prizes. This is pretty impressive, Damichael. A $2,500 Best Buy gift card upgrading any sports cave setup you might have, a $300 Game Time gift card, and a $200 Fanatics gift card. Those are amazing potential prizes for you, and it's easy and free to enter. All you have to do is subscribe to Locked On Grizzlies between April 7th, which was a few days ago, and April 30th, 2025, to be automatically entered to win. Do not miss a moment of the hopeful playoff run for the Grizzlies. Join Locked On Grizzlies with our newsletter today and experience the playoffs like never before. Subscribe today and enter to win by clicking the link in our episode description. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts. We're proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, any place you get a podcast, Amazon, you can check us out any of those spots. Be an everydayer. Check out our work as we head into a pretty significant weekend for the Grizzlies. You have the Nuggets on Friday. Obviously, you've got the Mavericks to end the season on Sunday. And holy moly, the postseason's there, whether it's the play-in for Memphis or the playoffs. The play-in will be upon us, and we'll have plenty to discuss in the days to come. Make sure you're subscribing over at LockedOnDaily.com for that newsletter and entering to win any of those awesome prizes. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get audio, visual podcasts. Make sure you're with Damichael and I every step of the way. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Stay locked in. Take a nap at some point today. If you're washed like me, it's going to be hard to stay up, but it's the biggest game of the season so far. We'll catch you next time.